Have you ever met someone who had everything the world said they needed to be happy, yet they walked away from it all? Have you ever wondered why a man with wealth, success, and recognition would one day leave it behind, choosing instead a path that most would call foolish? This is not a story about losing riches, but about realizing that sometimes the chains we carry are made of gold. This is the story of a man named Daniel Carter, a man who ran away from wealth and in doing so, discovered a freedom far greater than any fortune could buy. Daniel was born into a family that believed in appearances. His father was a well-known businessman in New York City. His mother a woman who understood society's rules better than she understood her own heart. From the very beginning, Daniel was groomed to inherit success. His childhood was filled with private schools, expensive tutors, and a house that seemed more like a museum than a home. But even as a boy, he felt a strange emptiness. The house echoed with silence, broken only by the sound of footsteps on marble floors and the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall. By the time he was 15, Daniel had already traveled to more countries than most people see in a lifetime. Yet, he never once felt the thrill of adventure. Trips were business-related, vacations were networking opportunities, and friendships were carefully measured in terms of status and benefit. He often envied the kids he saw playing in the park near Central Park. Kids who wore faded t-shirts, scraped their knees, and laughed until they fell over. Daniel never had that. He had wealth, yes, but he didn't have freedom. As he grew older, the pressure increased. His father expected him to attend Harvard, to study finance, and to return home to manage the empire that had been built for him. Daniel did what was asked of him, because saying no was not an option. He graduated top of his class. He wore the best suits. He signed the contracts. To everyone else, he was the perfect son of the perfect family. But inside, he was drowning. Every morning, Daniel sat in a high-rise office overlooking the city. The glass windows sparkled, the leather chair was comfortable, and the salary he earned was beyond what most people could dream of. But every time he stared at the skyline, he wondered, what's the point? He didn't need more money. He didn't crave the applause of investors. What he craved was something he couldn't name. Something his soul ached for. The turning point came on a rainy afternoon. Daniel was on his way to a business meeting in Brooklyn when his car was caught in traffic. Frustrated, he asked the driver to stop so he could walk the rest of the way. As he crossed the street, he noticed a small coffee shop tucked between two laundromats. It wasn't fancy. The sign was old, the paint was chipped, but the warm glow from inside caught his attention. On impulse, Daniel stepped in. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and the sound of laughter came from a group of friends gathered at the corner table. They weren't dressed in suits. They weren't talking about profits or mergers. They were simply living. One of them played a guitar softly. Another was sketching in a notebook. A young woman behind the counter greeted Daniel with a smile so genuine, it startled him. For the first time in years, he felt human. He sat down at a small wooden table and ordered the simplest thing on the menu: black coffee. It arrived in a chipped mug, steam rising gently. Daniel took a sip, and something shifted inside him. It wasn't the taste, it was the realization that here, in this tiny, imperfect place, he felt more alive than in all the grand boardrooms he had ever entered. He didn't tell anyone about that visit, but he went back the next day, and the next. Slowly, he got to know the people there. An artist named Miguel, who painted murals on city walls. A woman named Clara, who worked 2 jobs but still found time to write poetry. A man named Jason, who had once been homeless but now played music on street corners to inspire others. These people had almost nothing in terms of wealth, yet they carried a richness Daniel had never seen before. They were free. They lived without pretending. And Daniel began to realize something painful. All his life, he had been running toward wealth, but away from himself. The decision didn't come all at once. It came in whispers, in long walks through the city at night, in conversations with strangers who spoke with honesty rather than polished lies. Finally, one morning, Daniel looked at his reflection in the mirror. He didn't see a man. he saw a prisoner. His golden watch, his expensive tie, his flawless apartment. It all looked like a cage. That day, he made a choice. He walked into his father's office and said the words no one expected to hear. "I am leaving." His father laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. But when he realized Daniel was serious, anger erupted. "You're throwing everything away! Do you know how many people would kill for the life you have?" Daniel's mother cried, begging him to reconsider. Friends called him insane. Colleagues said he would regret it. But Daniel had already decided. He packed a single bag, gave away most of his possessions, and walked away from the life everyone thought he wanted. For months, Daniel wandered. He worked odd jobs, slept in tiny apartments, and lived without a clear plan. Yet every day, he felt lighter. He learned to cook his own meals. He learned to fix broken things with his hands. He learned to live without the applause of the world. Most importantly, he learned to listen to himself, to others, to the quiet voice of truth that wealth had drowned out for so long. One evening, sitting by the Hudson River, Daniel finally understood the freedom he had been searching for. Freedom wasn't about how much money you had or how many choices wealth could buy. True freedom was the ability to live a life that was yours. To wake up and breathe without the weight of expectations crushing your chest. To say yes to the things that matter and no to the things that don't. Years later, people still ask him why he left. They can't understand. Some shake their heads, calling him foolish. But Daniel no longer needs their approval. He runs a small community center now, teaching art, music, and basic life skills to kids who grew up like he once did, trapped by the illusion that money equals happiness. And every time a child laughs, every time a young artist finds their voice, Daniel knows he made the right choice. This story is not about rejecting wealth. It's not about pretending that money doesn't matter. It does. We all need it to live. But when money becomes the master and we become the slave, we lose something far greater than we realize. We lose ourselves. So ask yourself, are you living the life you want or the life others expect of you? Are you free, or are you trapped in a cage that looks beautiful from the outside but suffocates you within? Daniel's journey reminds us that true wealth is not in what we own, but in how we live. Freedom doesn't come from running toward riches, but sometimes from having the courage to walk away from them. And maybe, just maybe, the freedom you're searching for is waiting for you too, not in the things you were holding on to, but in the things you're willing to let go. Because at the end of the day, freedom isn't given, it's chosen.